Welcome, and I'd like to thank again Dr. Julie Hunter and Crane's West African Drum and Dance Ensemble for their welcome. Would you join me in thanking them again? I'm Michael Sitton, Dean of the Crane School of Music, and it's a pleasure to welcome you to the keynote address by Douglas Visiting Master Teacher Patricia Campbell. It's an honor to bring Professor Campbell here to share her insights with our students and faculty at the end of 2 long days of doing that. We appreciate that very much. I want to briefly acknowledge the visionary gift of Joy Anthony Douglas from the Crane class of 1956 in endowing a generous fund that allows us to bring master teachers annually to share their experiences, insights, and perspectives with us. Although Joy couldn't be with us tonight in person, I think she may be joining us along with her husband Chet by our live video stream, and would like to welcome her and both of them and ask that you join me in thanking her for her generous support for the future of music education at Crane. Thank you, Joy. And thanks to all of you for being here. I'd also like to thank Dr. Marcia Baxter, who is chair of the Department of Music Education, who organized this residency. And now would ask you to welcome Dr. Bernadette Tiapo, who is SUNY Potsdam's Chief Diversity Officer, and she will add her welcome to you and to Dr. Campbell.
Good evening, everyone. At a time when our campus is actually in the process of drafting its first strategic plan for diversity, equity, and inclusion, the event this evening couldn't have been more timely. I am truly honored to introduce tonight's guest speaker, Dr. Patricia Campbell. Dr. Campbell is an eminent scholar who has done a lot in the area of intersection of music and diversity-related issues. She has a rich biographical profile. A graduate of Kent State University, Dr. Campbell currently teaches undergraduate and graduate courses at the interface of ethnomusicology and music education, including music for children, world music pedagogy, and ethnographic research in music. Since 2010, Dr. Campbell has chaired the Ethnomusicology program, establishing the BA in Ethnomusicology degree and developing studies in music and in community. Her accolades are just so many. I would like to highlight just a few. Dr. Campbell has been an active member of various journal editorial committees, like the Journal of Research in Music Education, the Psychology of Music, Research Studies in Music Education. She has written well over 150 books, chapters, and several journal articles, including titles with diversity and multicultural descriptors like Teaching Music Globally in 2004, Multicultural Perspectives in Music Education, 3rd edition released in 2010, Music in Cultural Context in 1996, and Lessons from the World in 1991. She has served on several renowned boards. For instance, she is chair of the board of Simpsonia Folkways, working on enhancing the teaching of American and global music expressions in schools and communities. She was president of the International Society for Music Education from 2013 to 2014. Dr. Campbell was named the Donald Peterson Professor of Music in 2000 and continues to hold this appointment offered to accomplished faculty at the University of Washington. In 2013, she received a Tahiti Traditional Music Award with 2 others for her work on the transmission, teaching, and preservation of traditional music in schools and university programs of music education. She has also delivered lectures and conducted clinics across North America and Europe, Asia, Latin America, Australia, New Zealand, and South Africa. Dr. Campbell is a lifelong learner. She continues her study of music transmission processes through applied lessons and visiting artists, culture bearers, and community musicians. I am sure her address this evening will help to reinforce similar desires in us all, to strive to be lifelong learners, being open to discussing and embracing different viewpoints and value systems, which in essence would help enhance our multicultural and inclusivity goals. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Patricia Campbell.
Thank you so much. Thank you so very much. I have had a wonderful 2 days, and I'm so pleased to have yet another morning here at SUNY Potsdam. It is an amazing place, a space where music is vital and vibrant, and where learners are like atoms and molecules just bumping up and bouncing from one another, all kinds of ideas about music. And in my little travels these 2 days about the learning of music and the teaching of music. This is an historic place in all of our country where musicians with this great love for music and the related arts of dance, movement, of theater, can come together and make brilliant music and indeed take the track, or one of several tracks, I should say, including the possibility of learning to articulate it, learning to teach it, to give it to others, to facilitate music making of all kinds to children, youth, adults of all ages. And again, I'm very pleased to be here. I'm grateful for the warm hospitality and thank especially Dr. Marcia Baxter, also some wonderful time with Dr. Julie Hunter, and an opportunity indeed to at least connect in some way to Joy and Chet. So thanks for listening in and for having me here. So I guess what we have going, maybe the music is the best part. It usually is. And again, another warm bit of applause for our African ensemble here at SUNY Potsdam. Don't you think so? Yeah. Yeah. Wonderful. Great to hear it. Hard to sit in the seat and really feel the invitation to want to come up and join. But I think bright things are coming from this group and from the opportunity for anyone who is a student here at this university to join in this ensemble, to make music in a participatory way. These slides coming up, these ideas are indeed kind of a part of a lifelong way of thinking about music and learning and teaching, and wondering about music and the bridges that we make as we make the music indeed, and as we build relationships forward. I would like to talk about fields that are close enough together such that those of us in areas of music might just cross that bridge over from one field to the next. Criss-crossing fields, intersections, evolutionary intersections of these two fields, ethnomusicology and music education. We consider then, in our little bit of time together, these relationships between two fields that are specialized fields in music, indeed with histories of their very own, with many commonalities, even as they are distinctive pursuits to take. And these two fields of music education and ethnomusicology are united by music that we play, we sing, and we dance. Let's not forget the dance. Even a lovely conservatory of music, rather than a conservatory of music and dance, as it is named, needs to consider how the embodiment is so important to all of us in music. So we are united by this conglomerate area of playing, singing, dancing. And yet, in some ways, in some fashion, we are a bit divided by a system, the system in which we live, and by a human tendency to categorize and classify and to identify in one field but not the other, as if there are walls or fences that should exclude us from one side, from one field, if in fact we have identified with another. Please allow me to say that these ideas coming forward are never one person alone. And I do want to provide the context and certainly give further thanks to my colleagues at my university in the music education program of the University of Washington. And so these folks are colleagues and wonderful thinkers with public school, private school teaching, K-12, and with interests in the practice of teaching, the practice of music making, and the research and scholarship that comes, especially as we think about graduate education that goes on. Also to pay tribute to my friends on the other side of the hall, and it looks like I'm over there too, my friends in the field of ethnomusicology. And these folks too have helped to shape me, because we are never just one. We are the group. We are our family. We are the neighborhood, the community in which we live. I'd like to say then that these ideas are inspired that come forth here this afternoon from colleagues. And the point is to think about dovetailing, to think about how fields that sometimes seem so separate are actually able to come together in quite natural ways. Because music education is about building human relationships, about caring about these relationships tended by us who make music, and through music, how indeed we bond. Ethnomusicology cares about human relationships, and the academic study of music as is embedded in culture, in families again, in neighborhoods, in communities. Ethnomusicologists of note are these five who have been influential to me outside of my own university, and who have been influential to many. And just to name the fellow over on the left high side as the famous Bruno Nettle, who's written more books than just about any scholar we can imagine in the ologies of music, whether musicology or ethnomusicology. Bruno Nettle, the great-grandfather, still alive and living in Illinois at age 85, writing, thinking, making music, and certainly caring about how music is indeed an understanding of human relationships. In the middle, a mariachi player, Dan Shehan, who crisscrosses, certainly, and code switches. When you hear him speak in Spanish and play that guitar or requinto or vihuela, you think you're in Mexico, that you've got this sort of connection and communication from a Mexican musician who is in fact Irish-American by birth. Wonderful Portia Maltsby on the far end there, who has chronicled African-American music over all of its history. She's an historian as well as a sociologist and anthropologist of music. We have down here on the left side Anne Rasmussen. The name sounds Finnish, and she is Finnish-American, but she spent a long time in the Horn area of Africa and over into the Near East, especially Oman, and she happens to play that oud that is there in her lap very well. And then at the far end bottom is one of the great Seegers of the American Seeger family. This is Anthony Seeger, an ethnomusicologist of note who still plays the banjo, the grandson of Charles Seeger, the founder of musicology in an American way, and a fellow who said, you know what, when I went to college, I thought, I'm not going to make music my area of study. I'm going to go off into anthropology and study cultural affinities and kinship. What turned out is he became a Latin American specialist, a Brazilian specialist, and he lived for years on a tributary of the Amazon River. He brought with him his guitar and his wife, the banjo, and they played together. And the Brazilian Suya people with whom he lived and with whom he learned about music in a culture, in society, learned from them songs, Anglo Anglo-American songs, African-American songs. And 20 years later, he wound up in that same village, and he found out that these Brazilian rainforest people, the Suya, were now singing the songs that he had sung right there in the hammock in this small village. You know, an amazing story to me of how music gets passed on in places far removed from the place of origin. Ethnomusicologists of note who have made their lives all about studying music and human relationships. I want to pay tribute to a teacher, a music education student at my institution, graduated quite a number of years ago and became the Teacher of the Year at the American Teacher of the Year, a designation that goes to just one teacher from any subject area across the broad swath of subject areas. Andrea Ron Peterson was an instrumental music education major. She taught band, then she taught in a small mountain town in the west part of Washington State. And she learned how to make music not only a part of the children within her classes, but of the whole school and of the community in that mountain town, Darrington, Washington. And she was nominated, and she became the one and only music teacher ever to be named the National Teacher of the Year. Again, I bring her up partly out of affiliation and what I have learned from her, many things, but also to say that she understood the importance of music in growing community and human relationships. We have this sense then of a sort of continuum in our lives. Those of us who profess music know we need audiences. No, we need collaborators. We need people with us making the music. Know that we share in the realms of scholarship, of research, and of practice in the work that we do. And that continuum works for people in a number of specializations across music at the university level in conservatories like this one. Once in a while, I have to ask myself, who am I? And there is a Delphic dictum, if you will, this kind of Greek sense of knowing thyself. And we ask the question when we're 12, on the cusp of adolescence. And we ask the question when we're 15 and 16 and thinking about higher ed. Where will we go? What will we study? We ask the question all through our lives to kind of get a checkpoint of what really we want to do with the music we make. And for a time, it might be by spiraling up to become the very best we can be on that instrument in that repertoire. We also spiral into roles as teachers, as facilitators, and we spiral across repertoires. If it is a kind of Western art music, if it is a canonized kind of wind band music, or choral music, or piano music, at some point in our long lives as musicians, working in schools and communities, we may move out and ask the question, what really do I want to do in music? What music is mine? Is there more than a single music with which I might identify? Because we have a lifelong possibility of this time in the musical ways in which we live. Saying a little bit more about context and transmutations of a music teacher myself. My own mentor, main professor in my PhD, said to me, PC, my initials, long ago, remember, you're a music teacher. You're not an ethnomusicologist, because I was already gravitating then to wanting to know these other musics and playing and singing little bits of this and that and going down the corridor to dance and having a little go at that too. A little bit of dabbling, certainly, but my mentor kept calling me back to tell me, remember who you are. You can't be many things. Years later, Bruno Nettle, the grandfather again of ethnomusicology, said to me, "You've paid your dues. You're an ethnomusicologist. You've been working with children as culture. You've been spending time in Bulgaria. You've been working with the Yakima of Western Washington, one of the Native American groups. You're an ethnomusicologist." Well, in fact, let me just clarify for now, I really am a music teacher, like many of us who are inspired to go on and to figure ways of activating music in the lives of young people, particularly in schools. And yet, while we call on a particular identity, there is the plausibility of multiple identities and involvements coming forward. Again, at this moment, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, the idea of continuing to grow a whole lifetime of musical possibilities and specializations that circle round our musical core. Share with you that some friends of mine gather, and I join them as they make a very strong coffee. And we have a lovely time telling stories and sometimes singing songs. And Hidat Ephraim is among them. She's over to the left. And she shared with me a song that I think makes a good deal of sense for my own way of thinking about music and human relationships. She sang a song to me, goes, "Ha shawiye, shawiye, ha shawiye, shawiye, ha shawiye, shawiye, alam kitfelto shawiye, kaluna ninitna shawiye, ha shawiye nibel shawiye, ha shawiye nabina shawiye, ha shawiye, shawiye, ha shawiye, shawiye, ha shawiye, shawiye." And so Hidat Ephraim sang that song, and I said, "I love the sound of it. What is it?" Because I was looking for songs from different places in the world that I might, work into some of my teaching many years ago. And she said, "Well, you might be interested in this translation. What it means is going around together." I said, "I don't quite get it." She said, "This is my hashowie, and what I'm singing through the song is to say, part of a group, working together. When there's troubled times, we work together and work out the kinks. When there's joy in the life of one, we share it together." And of course, it follows this very theme of music and community. You hear the call and response going on, and every time shoye comes up, that is translated round. Ha-shoye is going round. And these other little bits are simply to say, in thick and thin, we go together, and with good support for one another. Wonder if you join me, okay? If I sing, ha-shoye, you sing, shoye. Ha-shoye, shoye, ha-shoye, shoye, ha-shoye, shoye, alam kitfelto, shoye, kelumeninitna, shoye, ha-shoye nebel, shoye, ha-shoye novena, shoye, ha-shoye, shoye, ha-shoye, shoye, ha-shoye, shoye. Yeah. Now, this song, she says, it's my song, but I'm giving it to you. And I said, well, how would you feel? Is there harmony in Eritrea among the Tigrinya-speaking people? And she said, no. I said, so how do you feel if we did some harmony? She said, okay with me, because now it's your hashoye. And so I would invite you, as others have done, adding harmony. I remember we did it one time in Venezuela, and I started hearing these clicking sounds. What is that? And it turns out that we were in an auditorium with no carpeting, but rather wood floors, and people were wearing hard-heeled shoes, both men and women. And I'm telling you, they were clicking all kinds of ways in a kind of polyrhythm, if you will, as well as having a harmony going on. I invite you to click, if you wish, but certainly to join in the harmony in singing this song, Ha-Showie. Okay? Here we go again. Ha-Showie, Showie, Ha-Showie, Showie, Ha-Showie, Showie, Alam Kitfelto, Showie, Kiluminit na, Showie, Ha-Showie Nomina, Showie, Ha-Showie Nibel, Showie, Ha-Showie, Showie, Ha-Showie, Showie, Ha-Showie, Showie. Beautiful. Wow. Singing group you are. Lovely voices. Clicking is not quite, Tuesday night, maybe not, So, thanks very much for that, for joining in it. It's been notated, but she said, nah, we wouldn't notate it. Why would we notate it? This is just a song that we learn, and then we kind of make it our own. And so, as a music teacher, that's exactly what I've attempted to do, turning this into a little bit of a keystone piece that I can use again and again in high schools and middle schools and elementary schools. I like the idea. I like the theme behind it. And Hidat said, in response to my question, do you have a song when we first started up? Of course I have songs, many from my childhood. No one ever asked me for them before. Now I teach them to children in my community to keep the culture alive. So, indeed, a song brings a language forward and even a philosophical kind of way of thought and certainly a way of living. As a music teacher, I've wondered in teaching the song out of Eritrea, can I get the students to sing this song precisely in tune and very much in time? As a music teacher, I think about good sound. And then I've learned from students who ask questions. Well, beyond what you're having us learn, tell us, who sings this song? What language are we singing in? Do children ever sing this song? What do they do? What do their families do? What's their history? Where in the world is Eritrea? Can we meet someone from Eritrea? And, one thing leads to another. As you see, questions beget questions. And all of a sudden, I'm finding myself, the music teacher, in the land of ethnomusicology, where music is more than sound alone, beautiful as that is, but about the whole context and the meaning of the music. Of course, when we teach a song, a new musical piece, we might show the head of a great composer, or we might show some kind of iconic representation of a place or a people. And so working with children, a photo of children out of Eritrea can be useful. And of course, most of my students have no idea where Eritrea is. So sometimes a quick little map, not for first and second graders, but for 10th graders who kind of get map work, or possibly 5th graders, can be very useful. Anyway, a little excursion into a song that is a teaching song. But back to the point, or one of several. We can be approaching music from the music education perspective or from the ethnoid, ethnomusicological perspective. And so is it one or is it the other? And we might say, approaching music can happen from music education's side view as well as from the ethnoid view. Both is good. Okay? Because music teachers and ethnomusicologists are all about the music. Let's face it, that's at the core, okay? And whether we're looking at the great Louise Fletcher, who is taking her little Victrola into the studio to get Mountain Chief on recording back in about 1893, that kind of a recorder, or whether we're looking at children playing recorders, it's still about the music, and we're interested regardless of our specialization. We think about fiddles, and music educators are working with little ones with fiddles, and not so little. But there's fiddles out there in those hills, those thar hills. And ethnomusicologists have chronicled the sounds of musicians who have never made it to a conservatory, but they play pretty well. It's about the music when we think of horns, wind and brass instruments, and whether it's in the classroom or whether it's out there in the bush, there are horns that produce wonderful sound through the vibration of the wind. About the music when we think about singers in choirs, or singers who stand close to one another and sing on the breath of one another, right? These women up in Nunavut, the latest of the provinces in the country north of us, where the singing must be close. And again, the hocketing that goes on, a beautiful sound that is made together. Different kinds of vocal timbres, very different repertoires, but we care because we're musicians, regardless of what side of the fence we may be on. And it's about the music, again, in the case of further wind instruments. Andean pipe players out on the right upper, and our saxophone lesson in a classroom there in any local school. It's about the music when we see two characters having real happiness in the experience of singing together in a choir. And it's about the music in this iconic figure that was long the symbol of the Society for Ethnomusicology, a bone flute played by a fellow out of Polynesia many years ago, and the incredible joy that comes from that. About the music as we think about a stretch, Ngoma style, which is to say in a pro-Bantu kind of way, Ngoma is the dance as well as the music, and the poetry, and the pageantry, all of the play that comes round. And you can see even here that you've got folks dancing, some of them with ankle jingles on. You've got xylophones, Gil xylophones from the, I think it's the northeast of Ghana. You've got plenty of clappers and singers down under the tree in the shade. It's about the music, regardless of which specialization we take. When we hear a piece of music, our analytical minds go forward, whether we're ethnomusicologists or music educators.
Alza los ojos y mírame a mí, no me desprecies, no seas así.
Beautiful, yeah. And again, the core is music and, of course, human relationships. And we can analyze it for that triple time and for the timbres that we hear, for the harmonies that come forward, for the themes, and even for that hemiola. We can use those terms, those concepts, that language, whether we are ethnomusicologists or music educators. And the music excites us to some extent. But as music teachers, we're wondering, how is it learned? How is it transmitted? What can we do to bring this music forward, this brilliant sound? And as ethnomusicologists, we may be asking loads of questions about where, who, when is this music made? At any rate, I go on, and perhaps on and on a bit too long, and you're wondering, stop. Really, where are we here? What is the fuss? And I want to come forward and say that the fuss is that we live in a society where systems call us to an attention of what our identity should be. As university faculty, but sometimes as K-12 faculty, we are restricted in our reach from our specializations in the way of forced choices. Tenure may require us to channel ourselves, that we are either an academic or we are a practicing teacher to be. We are either an instrumentalist with a specialization on one instrument only or another. But in fact, it is the system that closes us in and says, take a single lane there. And we have a lockstep system going on in colleges and universities among teaching faculty. Take one avenue and one only. And in our 4-year program as music majors, typically we have a forced choice. What will be your major? And sometimes we even feel guilty when we don't know our major when asked in our freshman year. My goodness, it takes time, and yet we're on a fast track in a way. As we've said earlier, there is a human penchant to categorize. You're either this or you're that. And we've categorized ad infinitum, right? Because biologically, we belong to a species, a genus, a family, an order, a class, a phylum, a kingdom, yeah? Within the arts, I'm an artist, you say in a cocktail conversation. Well, what kind of an artist are you? I'm a painter. Well, what kind of art do you produce? In the style of Impressionism. Well, would that be early or late Impressionism? And we find ourselves channeled. Now, I'm not arguing that specialization is important. I'm simply saying that as we go vertical, we could be thinking horizontally too. The other side is also true, from visual art to a musician. We are either or, and there's one identity, that forced choice, either or, moving us off into flutes of the world, or one particular flute with all the beautiful repertoire that exists there. And so perhaps you're arguing inside a little bit about holes in what you don't hear as an argument. And I'd like to take forward the possibility of experimentation. I'd like to suggest, as Max did cry out in Where the Wild Things Are, and now let the wild rumpus begin. Experiment, either now or soon. Consider that you may have multiple identities. It's possible that at least dual identities are there for you, that you can play 2 instruments, that you can play an instrument and you can sing, that you can dance as you sing, as you play an instrument, or pretty close to it, that you can, in fact, move ethnomusicology into your world as a music teacher, or perhaps vice versa, that you can have parallel tracks and intersecting tracks in your studies. Thank goodness here at SUNY Potsdam, where music education has been alive and well for so very long, and where we have opportunities to think diversity and to act diversity through academic courses and through ensembles, through opportunities to remember that the classrooms to which we will go, those of us in music education certification, are more diverse than they were when we left them just a few years earlier. Things that go well together, then, could very well be ethnomusicology and music education. Lutes, guitar-like plucked lutes. Ethnomusicologists have an interest in some of these lutes. Music educators are certainly working with children in learning to play lutes, right? Things that go well together. There again is ethnomusicology of a very early sort. And very quickly to say, and you may well know, that when we break down ethnomusicology, we're really looking at a field that cares about music at the core, people's interactions within music, and of course then the study of people's participation in music. And the names of these ethnomusicologists take us back almost a century to say that this academic field has legs. This academic field has its own history. But we in music education have plenty on our plates in a 4-year program, and we're trying to get the repertoire that is wonderful repertoire to move into schools. Ethnomusicology is coming on in through the back door and beginning to fill some of our needs as we recognize that they've been about diversity for a very long time. They've been about the study of music as sound, but also as behavior. Who's making the music, when, where, and how? And conception. Why do people make this music? Okay? Think exotic, but think music in the local, very close to you, very close to the school in which you will be teaching. Research in neuroscience or neuromusical research and music cognition suggests that music is not just sonic aural commodity for entertainment. Love to entertain people when we get that music well and give them a good evening of sound. But music is also something very complex, consequential. It is a social activity with aesthetic, affective, and cultural value, and significant effects on our abilities and motivations to engage in human relationships, social interactions. And what's very ethno and very muse-ed is this idea of honoring music's sonic and social facets. So whether we're in the West, which we certainly are, or in all other parts, the rest of the world, music is not for listening alone. Music is for doing. And as Thomas Torino has said in Music and Social Life, music is presentational up here on a stage for all the rest of the audience to enjoy, but music is also participatory. And ethnomusicologists and music educators know that to be so. I spent some time in Mississippi and looked at some early recordings and helped bring back some early recordings to people in small towns, and came about some beautiful photographs of Otha Turner and his family. Otha Turner is now deceased, but he lived in Senatobia, Mississippi, small town, but one of the birth of the blues towns in that southern state. And Otha Turner played a cane flute, and they would have after church a couple times a year goat picnics in Senatobia, Mississippi. And everyone ate goat, but everyone also made music. And they sang it, they played cane flutes that could be made in about 30 minutes because you just pick a piece of cane from the field near where the goat was burning and toasting, and you hollow out that cane, you burn little holes in it, and by golly, you've got a flute that you can join in and play with all the rest. Or maybe you're going to sing, or maybe you're going to pick up a couple of those drums. But the interesting thing is, this is participatory music. Everyone's having a pretty good time with the goat and with each other making music. Nobody's an outsider, everybody's in. In this next little cut, we're over in let's see, this would be Ethiopia, and we've got a group of men who just spontaneously start singing because they realize that it's the anniversary of a couple that they know very well, and nothing has been planned, but all of a sudden they're singing and a few more are joining with them. Notice the dancing. And I think the interesting thing is that, we've got this sense of music for social interaction, spontaneous music. Nothing very complicated. The greater complication is not the sound, but rather the human interactions that come to be. We have possibilities for music as a medium for social interaction in our everyday, or at least close by. The karaoke singing that still happens in some cafes and nightclubs. The singing of national patriotic songs where folks sometimes just can't help but to feel the pride of nation to sing. The playing in bands together, in the backyard, in the garage. Nothing very complicated, but by golly, we're all going to play together. The rhythmicking and the chanting that happens at various athletic events, whether it's a baseball stadium or a football stadium, you name it, but where the crowd joins together. And certainly participation in school music classes where folks are not necessarily pros. They may be moving in that direction, but maybe the more important point is the social interactions, the human relationships, the participation alone. To say for sure the functions of music in human society is to consider the words of Bruno Nettel, and there he is in the study of ethnomusicology. He says all music can be put into one category or another, sometimes both. He said the function of music is twofold: to control humanity's relationship to the supernatural. Okay? Music for the sake of connecting to the cosmos, to the heavens, to the deities, to the ancestors, to the spiritual. Okay? And across world societies, that is a very deep function of music. And so making that music as good as we can is important. We want pure, we want well-practiced, we want impassioned music to go forward. But the other function is to support the integrity of individual social groups. So there again, this idea coming from ethnomusicology, springboarding into music education, we care that music should function to help socialize children and youth in our schools. At the very heart of our two fields to which we give our attention is this sense of human musicality, or maybe musical humanity, that music is a component of a general human communicative toolkit, that music is underpinned by neural, cognitive, behavioral, and affective mechanisms and processes similar to those underpinning language. Yeah? Coming straight out of scientific work recently. Very ethno, very music ed are the personal interactions that we can have, teachers and academic scholars, with singers, players, and dancers. Alan Lomax there with a Haitian singer, dancer, player. Very ethno, very music ed, to play with the players. The music teacher who picks up the horn rather than to swing the arms at the front all the time at the podium. Simply to have a chance to join in, to model a phrase, but actually to play with the kids. And indeed, this ethnomusicologist on the left side who joins in with an artist from Bulgaria on bagpipe, and that is a way that ethnomusicologists learn. It is also the bridge between a cultural insider and a scholar on the outside wanting to get in and understand. It's very music ed and very ethno to give children agency, to hear children's voices, to give them a place at repertoire selection, to give them time to express themselves. Okay? And we see that happening in ethnomusicology, where we don't want to be too ethnocentric. We want to step aside and listen to the musicians from a place tell their stories, instead of to top down expect that we would command them to play repertoire that we can record, that we can take back with us for all kinds of record industry. And very music ed, as we say, to allow children an opportunity to be agentive musicians, making choices, joining in the mix of what music we make and how. And of course, it's very music ed and very ethno to teach with diversity in mind. Yeah. And these children playing steel bands or steel pans from Trinidad, glorious instruments that they are not Trinidadian. They are Chicano kids living on the east side of Washington State. But by golly, they are learning this music, and they're having a wonderful time taking it to festival. Ethnomusicologists care about the fact that that these instruments are making their way. Repertoire is making its way into all kinds of community and school settings. So we have, again, this dovetailing idea, wondering about the coming together of the fields. And we might find this as an interesting forecasting kind of statement. John Blacking was an ethnomusicologist who did work in South Africa. And he said right at the start of a book that is as much about music education as ethnomusicology, published many years ago, How Musical is Man? He says, ethnomusicology has the power to create a revolution in the world of music and music education. And you have to understand that in 1973, nobody in music classrooms were thinking much about diversity. We've come a long ways, and ethnomusicologists have helped music teachers along. We find that ethnomusicologists have interests in learning, and all these names here indicate scholars who have gone to places from the Blackfoot Indians of Montana to the Suya of Brazil, to the Balinese out there in Southeast Asia, to the Ethiopian Jewish community, and so forth. And they have asked questions about how is music learned? And we in music education read some of their monographs and were stunned and awestruck by the extent to which much music in the world is made without any notation. And we wonder, should we be balancing notational literacy with ear training just a little bit more? We work with local communities out at my university, and it is something that both ethnomusicologists and music educators find very useful. We were talking just yesterday about a mandate in the state of Washington that every certified teacher must teach cultural values and histories of Native American peoples. Well, thankfully, we have a Coast Salish archive of recordings of songs and stories right there, brought by the ethnomusicologists, given permission by the Coast Salish people, and now we've got teachers tapping in to this archive. It's an interesting photo here, thinking of an ethnomusicologist in a music education space. This is my classroom, my university classroom. This is Jim Morford. He taught school for 6 years. He was a percussion major. He started with a BA in physics, switched over to a BA in music, switched into an MA in music education, taught for 6 years, and found himself in the midst of making music from various places in West Africa. And so he now, as a music teacher, is studying music and culture and helping our music education people to learn a little bit more in a participatory way of this music. We have local cross-fertilizations that happen all over the place, and I draw your attention to names of people, again, folks that I know well out in my place, who are joining together, all faculty. We got the theorist and the music historian studying American art and American popular music. We've got the Baltic Studies faculty on our campus, folks who look into studies in Lithuania, Estonia, Latvia, joining with the choral faculty, and they have all kinds of fusion work going on. In boldface, we have Stephen Morrison and Shannon Dudley looking at music competitions. Stephen Morrison in music education, studying festivals, band festivals in particular, and adjudication processes. We've got Shannon Dudley engaged as a judge in Trinidadian steel band ensembles, both in Trinidad and around the United States. Very interested in competition and this kind of human interest that we have to compete. Ethnomusicology's music education relevant research themes go across these various themes, as I say, these various realms of study. And they are of interest to us in music education, even as they are written about and drawn from many cultures. Dissertations have come up. Folks who run for the PhD are mixing ethnomusicology and music education. People in ethno studying band culture. Band is a culture, and it is its own wonderful, brilliant culture. What is going on there in the way of music and human relationships? Studies of family music, music in families, mothers and fathers raising children, grandparents giving back to their grandchildren. But this cross-fertilization is happening, and we'll just scan this very quickly to say that dissertations are beginning to fuse these two areas of which we've been speaking. Ethnographically considered, as well, composition and improvisation. Are these folks in music education or ethnomusicology, or maybe a blend of the two? And then PhD studies on world music pedagogy. How do we teach music of a place that we've not grown up in? How is the music made? Do we go beyond getting the song, and do we move to transmission processes that are unique to a place in the South Seas, to a place in East Asia, to a place in East Africa? We have found lots of fusions going on between the two fields in mapping children and the music that they make. Again, through the handbook published by Oxford University Press of children's musical cultures. You've seen this slide. Girls Club in Bali, girls after school who make music in a gamelan of bronze xylophones and gongs. A Yakama Native American tribal nation boy band of drummers and singers. Mommy, really grandmother to the little girl named Agada, teaching salsa, Puerto Rican style. Father and son on either side of the slightly eldering man, learning the music biz there in Northeast India. And that music business is all about not sitars, not tabla, but brass bands. And these two sons are learning how to play the brass instruments that will play at weddings and various kinds of celebrations that can last them their lifetime long. These, again, pointing out to you that there's a little music ed, there's a little ethnomusicology in these studies of children and youth here and there in the world. And of course, across playgrounds anywhere, we find girl play happening, and that's of interest to us in these areas. Singing games as serious business. Okay, they are at work, they are intent, they don't want to break the rhythm, they want to keep the song going and keep the movement of the object all the way around the circle. And the study of music that is mediated, music that is coming to children, that they will select out on their playlists. And this child is not living in the US, but rather in Southern Africa, where playlists are available to her and her friends too. It's not all about drumming, it's not all about dancing, it is also about mediated music. And then we have a group of children that I'll share with you here in Tanzania. They are rhythmic as all get out, and they are part of a festival that is bringing back the Wagogo identity through music in this small village in Tanzania. And watch how rhythmic they are. Lovely children at a festival owning up to their identity as Wagogo. But I bring this to you because things are starting to blur in my own thinking about music. Was the taking of this video by permission ethnomusicological in its activity? Are there all kinds of learnings for those in music teaching, including how did these children learn this amazing music? Also to make the point that children are very important to the ethnomusicological work that is being done. It's not just about studying the music of adults. Well, taking that child thing just a little bit further, you may recall the eldering man, Bruno Nettle, the great ethnomusicologist, and he said, "I regret that I didn't do more with children's musical culture in my fieldwork. There would surely have been a lot to learn in my visits to the Blackfeet in Iran and India. Life was too short, and I'm not sure I knew the right approaches. But in Detroit, when my daughter Becky was 2 years old and I had an old iCore tape recorder, we wanted to record what she said and sang. And I came on the idea of observing her, and I reported it in an article in Musical Quarterly. But the point is that when I told about this to anyone, his scholar friends in ethnomusicology, I would have to defend this interest by suggesting that one could learn about the development of early human music. Children's musical interests and behavior were not really considered a component of culture as a whole at that time. Well, these attitudes have changed, though perhaps not as much as one might wish. And he ends with saying that ethnomusicology is joining together to study music of children, and that we find through the discoveries of ethnomusicologists solutions to some of the practical problems in music education. Okay? And I think that's a lovely thought by someone who has lived in this field of ethnomusicology, looking over to music education. Well, as I say, we could go on and get into the pedagogical evolution of music as a world phenomenon, because that has come, because it must come, because diversity is everywhere. We have excuses going on, though, in the field of music education practice. The principles come up. Well, I can't make that music. I might not make it in an authentic way. And we worry about the fact that we might fall short of the way it ought to sound. But I've heard from too many people in too many places in the world to believe that anymore, to block me from giving it a try. Okay? I think that small steps, I've been told, is the way we can go. We may not sing powerful African American gospel if we were not born and raised, or with an ear and a few years at least of experience in that music. It takes time. And yet, again, Portia Maltzby is the one who said to me, you got to take that small step. You can't be afraid of it. You got to get it out there, because you're the only music teacher in that school, and you're not going to let it go now, are you? So authenticity is a bit of a thing that we need to get past. We need to consider context, right? The pizza that we grab from a box, or pizza with a little, fireplace in the background and romantic setting. Context is everything, right? And so sometimes we say, well, when we take the music out of context, what do we got left? No excuse anymore, because we've got all kinds of internet possibilities to bring context in there, okay? To show the people who make the music, to Skype people across the planet, to bring in the aunt, or maybe the janitress in the local school who has a song to share and helps to give context to the stories that she may tell. Puzzling through the principles of diversifying our curriculum. And wondering about representation. Oh my goodness, okay, we'll have a day, an hour in Latin American music. And so that's a pretty broad field. Which music shall we say will represent folks out of Central America, Mexico, the Caribbean, Northern South America, the Andes, Brazil, the South, Latin America in a nutshell? And we're going to have one piece stand for all of it? Hardly. Representation is not the way to go. Thinking of each piece as its own particular entity is how we as teachers must move forward. Collaborations and commitments, though, between music education and ethnomusicology are definitely in the picture. Also between teachers and artist musicians from places in which music lives out there in communities. Collaborations have happened in print. We had some years ago, and with the third edition in 2010, Multicultural Perspectives, put out by NAFME in music education. And we have on that list folks who are ethnomusicologists and folks who are music educators, finding diverse repertoire in order to bring into schools. We have collaborations in a series of books put out by Oxford University Press. Small books on music of North India, music of South India, music of East Africa, music of West Africa. All these books and the recordings are given to us by ethnomusicologists who developed relationships in music and came to know this music. All of these books and CDs are also spun out into instructors' manuals online on the Oxford University Press website, so that teachers could take these ideas further in a very inactive way. We have collaborations. Mary Getzi, the choral music educators, work in Global Voices, where she said, I don't know this music. I'm going to find the budget at my institution. I am bringing in the Maori singers. I am bringing in the Shona-speaking, Shona-singing Zimbabwean singers, because music is not just about singing it in my choir. It's about dancing it. It's about position, posture, perspective. I need to have those people there with me. And so she worked again with artist teachers. We've had collaborations between educators and ethnomusicologists in the way of recordings that we've turned out, going way back to the early 1990s. We have Smithsonian Folkways turning out, streaming collaborations of artists and ethnoids and music educators. And so we find ourselves taking stock, really, of these two fields, ethnomusicology and music education, and recognizing for ourselves the importance of music and human relationships, no matter how, at which side of the fence we may be. And so we think about applying ethnomusicology to our teaching and learning. We think about music education moving out to communities close and far. Musical communities like the Wagogo women out there in central Tanzania. Lots of lessons for teachers, even as we see ethnomusicologists collecting ideas for us with the permission of these lovely musicians. Community music happening on the streets of Boston and Austin and Seattle, where folks gather. They're not great musicians, most are not, but with a couple of pitches, they gather together and they foster human relationships. These phenomena are being studied by ethnomusicologists. How they learn is an interest, certainly, of music educators. We see the rise of the International Journal of Community Music, which features articles by music educators and ethnomusicologists. We see music educators going to after-school programs, teaching kids sometimes the music that didn't fit within the school day. We see music education going to communities of elders out in the community, of a place where the voices are still there, if only someone would ask and invite these elders to sing. We see music educators, again, after long, hard days, going into mixes and matches of adults who just want to play music. And they might have some odd combination of instruments, but we, the musicians, can move into these communities and bring a lot of joy. We even see music educators moving on over to territories that would seem to be more ethnomusicology's territory, where community gamelans are being conducted by music teachers who happen to have played a little bit, perhaps in university work. On the other hand, we see ethnomusicologists not simply sitting at some tape recorder and transcribing what they uncovered in the field. They're active in putting together displays in museums. They're active in getting their music into the recording industry. Active in putting on public concerts that have some real recognition by the public at large. Ethnomusicologists are actively involved in creating festivals of music of local and global styles. Ethnomusicologists have become very interested in the question of sustainability. Why is it that some music holds on and other music fades away? One of my PhD students now is studying music of Japanese gagaku tradition that has been around for 1,100 years. And her question is, how come this music is holding when so many other musics have gone away? Easy answer, because there are people that believe in this music as precious, as prized, as needing to be protected. The sustainability of music has very much to do with our music teaching and learning. And we find this incredible interest in sustaining diversity, for allowing people to speak their minds, to have their voices heard in the kind of diversified music curriculum and instruction that we allow. The ethnomusicologist Timothy Rice wrote a very short book. You might have seen these books here and there at fancy bookstores. A very short introduction to Islam, a very short introduction to Africa, a very short introduction to the Civil War. Timothy Rice was asked to write a very short introduction to ethnomusicology. And he writes on page 116, among the ethnomusicological themes that are particularly fruitful for music educators are cross-cultural perspectives on music cognition, mind-body and music-dance dualities, children's music culture, pedagogy of world music, and research approaches to musical thought and musical behavior. I find that fascinating, that we've got this statement of the fusion of these two specializations, the blurring of these areas that at one point were distinctive, that still have their own honored traditions, but are necessarily being driven together. Because these two fields really understand that what we do is all about the music. We're in it together. And at the very core of what we do is music and human relationships. The dovetailing of fields do address music and these human relationships. So we're crisscrossing roadways, and we're finding a throughway in a place right here at SUNY Potsdam, and in my place across at the other end of our continent, where indeed we're honoring these fields, and we're recognizing for very good reason these two fields will merge, and we will be able to deepen our understanding of music through the study of each of these fields together. So I thank you for listening to a rather long-winded talk, for singing a little bit earlier, for doing the good work you're doing, and for understanding that our future has got to be about music, human relationships, and the importance of diversity, living it as well as thinking it through. Thank you. Our evening is over. Thank you for a long evening. I'll see some of you tomorrow morning.